when the anesthesia pulled me under. I owned a condo worth $425,000. 6 hours later, I woke up homeless. My parents were sitting by my hospital bed, smiling that tight, rehearsed smile they save for public appearances, telling me not to worry because everything had been handled. It took me 3 days to realize that handled meant they had liquidated my life while I was unable to say no. The pain in my lower abdomen had been a dull, throbbing companion for 6 months, a sharp reminder that my body was rebelling against me. But as I sat in the passenger seat of my father's pristine sedan, watching the suburban landscape of Ohio blur into a gray smear of concrete and wet grass, the physical pain felt manageable compared to the suffocating weight of my parents' helpfulness. We were on our way to St. Jude's for a laparoscopic procedure that my surgeon promised was routine. It was a fixable problem, a structural issue. Just a few hours under, a week of recovery, and I would be back to my life, back to my job as a senior logistics coordinator, back to my condo in the city, back to the independence I had spent 33 years carving out of the bedrock of my family's expectations. My mother, Janet, sat in the back seat. She had insisted on sitting there so she could organize my paperwork. She said, though I suspected it was to monitor the back of my head for signs of anxiety. "You are quiet, Ellie," she said. Her voice was light, airy, the kind of tone people use when they are trying to calm a spooked horse. "I am just thinking about the anesthesia." "Mom," I said, staring at the dashboard clock. It was 6:45 in the morning. "You do not need to worry about a thing," she said. "We have the bag packed. Dad checked the route 3 times. We are going to be there 20 minutes early. We are handling everything." That was the phrase. Handling everything. It was their love language, and it was also their weapon. Since I was a child, love had been transactional. If I was good, I was rewarded with autonomy. If I struggled, even a little, the autonomy was repossessed. They did not shout. They did not hit. They just quietly, efficiently took over. My father, Robert, gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity. He was a man who believed that if he worried enough, he could prevent disasters. He glanced at me. "Did you bring the insurance card?" he asked. "Yes, Dad, the updated one. The one they mailed last week." "Yes, Dad, it is in my purse. Check it again," he said, "just to be safe." I sighed, the sound loud in the quiet car. I opened my purse, my fingers brushing against the cool metal of my keyring. I felt the familiar jagged edge of my condo key, the smaller, smoother key for the mailbox, the fob for the building entry. They were my anchors. That condo was the first thing I had ever owned that they could not touch. It was a 2-bedroom unit in a gentrifying neighborhood, valued at $425,000 at the last appraisal. It was my sanctuary. I pulled out the card. "Here, see?" He nodded, satisfied for the moment. "Good. We do not want any administrative hiccups. Stress is bad for the heart. You know what, doctor? Evans told me about my pressure. I knew. I always knew. His blood pressure was the 3rd parent in our family, a volatile entity that required constant appeasement. When we arrived at the hospital, the air was sterile and cold. The intake process was a blur of plastic wristbands and repetitive questions. I changed into the flimsy hospital gown, shivering as the nurse started my IV line. My parents hovered in the corner of the pre-op room, taking up too much space. My mother was arranging my clothes in a neat pile, folding my jeans with military precision. My father was reading the consent forms over the nurse's shoulder, his lips moving silently. The anesthesiologist came in, a young man with tired eyes, and explained the cocktail of drugs he would be using. I nodded, feeling the pre-surgery sedative they had given me 20 minutes ago starting to smooth out the edges of my panic. The room felt softer. The lights were less harsh. "Ellie, sweetheart," my mother said. She stepped up to the bedside, holding a clipboard. I blinked at her. "What is that?" "Just some standard things," she said. "The hospital needs a backup contact, and Dad wants to make sure that if, God forbid, there are complications, We can make decisions for you. I looked at the paper. The text was swimming slightly. It looked dense, legal. I already signed the healthcare proxy, I said, my tongue feeling thick. This is for the other things, she said, her voice soothing. Hypnotic, financial logistics, just in case you are under longer than expected and a bill needs to be paid, or we need to access your medical file to get a second opinion. It is a temporary authorization, strictly for emergencies. You know how these hospitals are with their red tape. I looked at my father. He was holding his chest, rubbing the sternum absent-mindedly. He looked pale. Just sign it. Ellie, he said, do not make your mother worry. We just want to protect you. Protect, that was the other word. I felt a spike of resistance, a warning bell ringing deep in my fogged brain. I should read it. I should read every word. But the nurse was checking the clock. The orderly was unlocking the wheels of my gurney, and the sedative was pulling me down into a warm, heavy darkness. I did not want to fight. I wanted to sleep. I reached for the pen. My signature was a loose scrawl, barely recognizable. Good girl, my mother whispered. She pulled the clipboard away quickly, sliding it into her oversized tote bag. We will take care of everything. The last thing I saw before the operating room doors swung open was my parents standing side by side, waving. They looked relieved, not worried, relieved. Waking up was not like in the movies. There was no sudden gasp, no immediate clarity. It was a slow, nauseating climb out of a deep well. My mouth tasted like copper and cotton. The lights overhead were aggressive, stabbing at my retinas. I groaned, shifting my legs. The pain was different now, sharper, surgical, but distant, muffled by heavy painkillers. Ellie. I turned my head. My parents were sitting in the 2 visitor chairs, positioned so close to the bed that their knees touched the mattress. They were watching me, not reading magazines, not looking at their phones, just watching. Hey, I croaked. Water, my mother asked. She was already holding a cup with a bent straw to my lips before I could answer. I drank greedily. The surgery went perfectly, my father said. His voice was too loud for the small room. The doctor said it was textbook. You have been out for about 4 hours. I tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness slammed me back into the pillows. Careful, my mother said, placing a hand on my shoulder. Rest. You have a long road ahead of you. I looked around the room. Where is my phone? It is right here, she said. She patted her purse. I have been keeping it safe. You had a lot of notifications. The noise was bothering the nurse, so I turned it off. Can I see it later? She said, you need to focus on healing. The doctor said stress is the enemy of recovery. We do not want you looking at work emails or worrying about the news. Give me the phone. Mom. I tried to put force behind the words, but it came out as a whine. She exchanged a look with my father, a look I had seen 1,000 times. The look that said, she is being difficult again. Fine, she said. She reached into her bag and handed me the device. My fingers felt clumsy as I unlocked it. The screen was flooded. 42 missed calls, 30 text messages, 17 voicemails. My stomach dropped. Who calls that many times in 4 hours? I scrolled through the log. Most were from numbers I did not recognize. Area codes from the city, a few from my building's management office, one from my neighbor, Mrs. Gable. Why did Mrs. Gable call me 5 times? I asked. My father stood up and walked to the window, turning his back to me. My mother smoothed the blanket over my legs. People worry. Ellie, you have good friends. Just ignore it for now. We have handled everything. There it was again. The door to my room pushed open, and a burst of bright energy swirled in. It was Maya, my best friend since college. She was carrying a massive bouquet of lilies that smelled strong enough to mask the antiseptic scent of the hospital. Oh my God. You are alive, she announced, dumping the flowers on the tray table. She looked frantic, her hair windblown, her eyes darting between me and my parents. Hi, Maya, I said, managing a weak smile. I tried to text you, she said. I tried to call. I thought something went wrong with the surgery. I am okay. I said, Just groggy. She looked at my parents, and her expression tightened. Hi, Janet? Hi, Robert? Hello, Maya? My mother said. Her tone was chilly. We were just telling Ellie she needs to rest. No excitement. Right, Maya said. She looked back at me, her eyes searching my face. She lowered her voice. Honestly, Elle, I am shocked you are even awake. With everything going on today, I cannot believe they actually closed that fast. The room went silent, the kind of silence that has a sound. A high-pitched, ringing frequency. Closed, I asked. Closed what Maya's eyes widened. She looked at my parents, then back to me, realizing she had stepped onto a landmine. Nothing. She stammered. I meant, the surgery. Closed up. The incision. You said close that fast. I said, my brain was fighting the drugs, trying to latch onto the logic. That is real estate talk. Maya, you are a realtor. I am just tired, she said, forcing a laugh. It has been a long day. I should go. I just wanted to see your face. She backed away toward the door. My mother was staring at her with a gaze that could have frozen boiling water. Maya. Wait, I said. Call me later. Elle, when you are home? She practically ran out of the room. I looked at my parents. My father was still staring out the window. My mother was fussing with the IV tube. What was she talking about, I asked. She is dramatic, my mother said dismissively. You know how Maya is, always making mountains out of molehills. I lay back, my heart hammering against my ribs. Something was wrong. The air in the room felt heavy, thick with unspoken truths. I unlocked my phone again. I ignored the missed calls and opened my browser. I needed to check something simple, something grounding. I navigated to the Condo Association portal. I usually paid my HOA dues on the 1st of the month, and today was the 31st. I wanted to make sure the autopay was queued. I typed in my username and password. Error. Invalid credentials. I frowned. I typed it again. Slower this time. Error. This unit number is no longer active under this account. My thumb hovered over the screen. No longer active. I opened my email. I scrolled past the work spam and the newsletters. There, nestled in the inbox, time-stamped 3 hours ago, was an email from the building management system. Subject welcome packet, Unit 4B. I opened it. Dear Mr. Henderson, welcome to the Avery. We are thrilled to have you as our newest resident. Attached, please find the rules and regulations. Mr. Henderson, Unit 4B, my unit. The room spun. I felt bile rise in my throat. I looked up at my parents. My mother was watching me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She knew. She knew exactly what I was looking at. Mom, I whispered, why is there a welcome packet for my condo addressed to a Mr. Henderson? She sighed. A long, tragic sigh. She reached out and took my hand. I tried to pull away, but her grip was surprisingly strong. Ellie, listen to me. We did not want to burden you with this until you were stronger. Burden me with what I asked, my voice rising. We had to sell the condo, she said. The words hung in the air. Absurd and impossible. You what? We sold it, she repeated, calm and steady, to protect you. Protect me, I screamed. The nurse station monitor must have spiked because I heard a beep accelerate. I own that place. You cannot just sell my house, Robert. Explain it to her, my mother said, looking at my father. My father turned from the window. He looked pained, his face drawn. Honey, you were in trouble, he said softly. We saw the notices, the foreclosure warnings. You were months behind on your dues. The bank was about to take it. We stepped in to save your credit. If we had let it go to auction, you would have been ruined. That is a lie, I said. I was shaking. I could feel the tremors in my hands. I am on auto pay. I have never missed a payment in 5 years. I have $80,000 in equity. You think you are on auto pay, my mother said, her voice dripping with pity. But you have been sick, Ellie, the pain medication. It makes you forget things. We found the letters, piles of them, unopened. Show me, I demanded. Show me the letters. We threw them out. She said, we did not want you to see them and panic. We cleared everything out. You cleared it out. We hired movers, my father said. While you were in prep. It was a rush. Ellie, we had to close today to beat the bank's deadline. It was a miracle we found a cash buyer willing to move that fast. I stared at them. They were building a reality around me, brick by brick, trapping me inside it. A reality where I was incompetent, drug-addled, and broke. But I knew my finances. I was obsessive about them. I want to see the closing documents. I said, I want to see the deed. I want to see where I signed. I did not sign anything, I yelled. You signed the power of attorney this morning, my mother said. Remember the temporary authorization? That was for medical emergencies. It was a general durable power of attorney. Ellie, it gave us the legal right to handle your assets in the event of incapacitation. And you were incapacitated. You were under anesthesia. My stomach heaved. I dry heaved over the side of the bed. Nothing coming up but acid. They had planned this. The timing. The surgery. The emergency paper. I want to see the papers, I gasped, wiping my mouth. Now. My father walked over and patted my leg. They are somewhere, honey. In the car. Maybe. Or back at the house. We can look for them later. Right now. You need to calm down. My chest is feeling tight. Ellie, please, do not do this to me. He rubbed his left arm, grimacing. It was the ultimate trump card. If you fight for your life, you might kill your father. I sank back into the pillows, defeated by my own physical weakness. I could not stand up. I could not walk to the car. I was tethered to a machine. My purse was still on the tray table where my mother had left it. I reached for it. My movements jerky. What are you looking for? My mother asked sharply. My keys, I said. I dumped the contents of the bag onto the table. Lipstick, wallet, tissues. The keyring clattered onto the plastic surface. I picked it up. My car key was there, the fob for my office, but the silver front door key, the one that opened the front door of Unit 4B, was gone, and the small brass mailbox key was missing too. The ring itself had been tampered with. The keys were in the wrong order. Someone had taken the ring apart, removed the specific keys that granted me access to my home, and put it back together. While I was sleeping, while they sat next to me, holding my hand, telling me they loved me. I picked up my phone again, my banking app. If they sold it, there had to be money, even if they sold it cheap. There was equity. $425,000 minus the mortgage balance meant there should be a check for at least $100,000. I logged in. Face ID recognized my pale, sweaty face. Checking account, $3,422. Savings account, $12,500. No pending deposits. No wire transfers. Where is the money? I asked. My voice barely a whisper. My mother was busy rearranging the flowers Maya had brought, turning the lilies so they faced the wall. It is complicated. Ellie, she said, there were fees, penalties, and the loan we gave you for college. We reimbursed ourselves for that. It is all in a trust now, for your future. We are managing it. You stole it. I said, my father made a wounded noise. Ellie, how can you use that word? After everything we have done today, we saved you. We are going to take you back to our house when you are discharged, my mother said firmly. You cannot go back to the condo anyway. The new owner is moving in tomorrow. You will stay in your old room. We will take care of you until you are back on your feet. She said it with finality. I was 33 years old, and I was being reabsorbed. They had erased my home, my independence, and my financial safety net in the span of 6 hours. I closed my eyes, feigning sleep. I needed them to stop talking. I needed to think. After 20 minutes of silence, my phone buzzed in my hand. My mother looked up from her magazine. Who is that? She asked. Just a work notification. I lied. I kept the phone angled away from her. It was a text message. The number was unfamiliar. No name, just 10 digits. I opened the message. If you are awake, check county records today. They moved fast. I stared at the gray bubble. The sender knew. Whoever this was, they knew exactly what had happened while I was bleeding on a surgical table. This was not a mistake. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a family dispute. I looked at my parents. My father was dozing in the chair, his mouth slightly open. My mother was watching the muted television, her face serene, mask-like. I gripped the phone tight enough to hurt my hand. I was not going back to their house to be taken care of. I was going to war. The glow of my phone screen was the only light in the hospital room. It was 3 a.m, the hour when hospitals are suspended in a strange, noisy silence, the hum of ventilation, the squeak of rubber soles in the hallway, the distant rhythmic beeping of monitors. My parents were gone, having left hours ago with promises to return at breakfast, leaving me alone with the text message that was still burning a hole in my mind. If you are awake, check county records today. They moved fast. I navigated to the county auditor's website. My fingers were stiff, and the interface was not built for mobile, requiring me to pinch and zoom until my eyes watered. I typed in my name, Young, Eleanor. The search wheel spun for an agonizing 10 seconds. Then the list populated. There it was, at the very top. Deed transfer, grantor Eleanor Young, grantee Kincaid, Holdings, LLC, date January 31st, today. My breath hitched, triggering a sharp pull in my abdominal incision. I clicked on the PDF icon. The document downloaded slowly on the hospital Wi-Fi. When it finally opened, I zoomed in on the bottom of the second page. There was my signature, Eleanor Young. I stared at it until the pixels blurred. It looked like my handwriting. The slant was right. The way the E looped into the L was familiar. If I were a bank teller, I would have cleared it without a second glance. But I was not a bank teller. I was the owner of that hand, and I knew the tiny, microscopic tells of my own muscle memory. I never crossed my A that high, and the tail of the G was too short, abruptly cut off as if the person signing had run out of confidence. It was a forgery, a good one, practiced and deliberate, but a forgery. Next to it was the notary stamp. Commission expires, May 2028. The timestamp on the electronic filing said 10:15 in the morning. At 10:15 in the morning, I had been intubated, my abdomen filled with carbon dioxide gas, a surgeon removing scar tissue from my insides. I was physically incapable of holding a pen, let alone signing away the most valuable asset I owned. I took a screenshot, then another. I saved the file to my cloud drive, then emailed it to my work address, then text messaged it to Maya. I was creating backups of the crime scene. I did not sleep the rest of the night. I lay there, listening to the shift change, feeling a cold, hard knot of dread replace the confusion in my chest. This was not a misunderstanding. My parents had not just sold my condo, they had impersonated me to do it. By 9 in the morning, I was sitting upright, fueled by lukewarm coffee and adrenaline. My parents had not arrived yet. I used the window of privacy to make the call. I dialed the number for the title company listed on the deed. Prestige Title and Escrow. Prestige Title. This is Brenda. A cheerful voice answered. Hi, Brenda, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My name is Ellie Young. I am calling regarding a closing that took place yesterday. File number 66529. Oh, yes, Ms. Young, Brenda said, her tone brightening. Congratulations again. That was a whirlwind closing. We do not usually see them move that fast. But your father was very persistent about the timeline. My stomach turned over. My father was very persistent. Thank you, I said, forcing the lie through my teeth. I am actually calling because I wanted to verify the wire instructions. I am looking at my bank account this morning, and I do not see the funds yet. I just want to make sure there was not a typo. Well, wires can take up to 24 hours, Brenda said, especially since we initiated it late yesterday afternoon. Let me pull up the disbursement sheet. I heard the clicking of a keyboard. Here we go, she said. We sent the net proceeds, which was $342,000 after the mortgage payoff and fees, to the account on file. Could you confirm the last 4 digits of that account, I asked. just for my peace of mind. Sure thing. Honey, it went to the account ending in 4409. I froze. My checking account ended in 812. My savings ended in 660. I did not have an account ending in 4409. 4409, I repeated. That is correct, Brenda said. The Bank of America business account. Business account, yes. The instruction form you signed, or the one your agent provided, listed it as a business checking. Is that wrong? I opened my mouth to scream, yes, it is wrong. I do not have a business account. But a survival instinct clamped my jaw shut. If I told her right now that it was fraud, she would freeze everything. She would call the police, and while part of me wanted that, another part of me, the part that had been raised to protect the family name at all costs, hesitated. If I triggered a fraud alert now, before I knew where the money was, it might disappear into the ether of a frozen investigation. No, I said, my voice faint. No, that sounds right. I just have multiple accounts. I must have mixed them up in my head. Thank you, Brenda. I hung up and stared at the wall. 4409. They had stolen the house, and they had diverted the cash to a secret account I had never seen. The door opened, and my parents walked in. My mother was carrying a fresh bag of clothes, and my father was holding 2 cups of Starbucks coffee. They looked refreshed, normal, like people who had not just committed grand larceny. Good morning, sleepyhead, my mother chirped. She set the bag down. Doctor, Evan says you might be discharged today if you can walk a lap around the floor. Isn't that great news? I looked at them. I really looked at them. My father was wearing a polo shirt tucked into khakis, the uniform of the respectable suburban retiree. My mother had her hair blown out. They looked so harmless. Where is the money? I asked. My father froze in the middle of taking a sip of his coffee. My mother turned slowly, her smile fading into a look of tragic disappointment. Ellie, she said, we talked about this. We did not talk about it. I said, you told me you handled it. I just spoke to the title company. They wired $342,000 to an account ending in 4409. I do not own an account with that number. Whose account is it? My father sighed. A long, rattling sound. He set his coffee down on the tray table with a heavy thud. It is a holding account, he said. A holding account. We set it up for you. My mother interjected, to keep the money safe. If it went into your regular account, you might spend it impulsively, or the creditors might seize it. We are protecting the principal so we can reinvest it for you later. Reinvest it, I laughed. A harsh, jagged sound that hurt my stitches. You mean like you reinvested my college fund? Or the money Grandma left me when I turned 21? That is unfair, my father said, his voice dropping to a wounded whisper. He slumped into the chair, looking suddenly frail. We used that money to keep the family afloat during the recession. We sacrificed everything for you kids. And now, when we are trying to stop you from making a financial disaster of your life, you treat us like criminals. You forged my signature. Dad, I did no such thing, he snapped. He looked me in the eye, his gaze steady and practiced. You signed a power of attorney. That gives me the right to sign your name as your agent. It is perfectly legal. I looked it up. I said, you cannot use a power of attorney to transfer real estate to yourself or to an entity you control unless it is explicitly stated in the document. And the deed does not say Robert Young as attorney in fact for Eleanor Young. It just says Eleanor Young. That means you pretended to be me. My mother burst into tears. It was instant, explosive, and loud enough to make me flinch. I cannot believe this, she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I have been up all night washing your clothes, packing your bag, worrying about your health, and this is the thanks I get. We are doing everything alone. Ellie. Everything. And you are just picking apart paperwork like a lawyer. She looked at me with genuine hurt. That was the terrifying part. She truly believed she was the victim. You are turning strangers into family, my father muttered, shaking his head. Calling title companies, checking records, trusting them over your own flesh and blood. It breaks my heart. Ellie, it really does. The guilt washed over me. Hot and suffocating, it was a conditioned response, installed in my operating system since birth. Mom is crying. Therefore I am bad. Dad is hurt. Therefore I must fix it. I felt the anger drain out of me, replaced by a muddy, confused shame. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I did not understand the law. Maybe they really were just trying to help, and I was being paranoid because of the drugs. I am not trying to be mean. I said, my voice trembling, I worked hard for that condo. Mom, it is just a building. She sniffed, wiping her eyes with a tissue. We still have each other. That is what matters. Now, please, stop asking questions. You are making your father's blood pressure skyrocket. I stopped asking questions, but I did not stop thinking. 2 hours later, I was discharged. The car ride to their house was silent. When we pulled into the driveway of the house, I grew up in a sprawling 2-story colonial that always felt slightly too big and too cold. I felt a wave of claustrophobia so intense I almost refused to get out of the car. They installed me in my old bedroom. It had been preserved as a shrine to my teenage self, filled with dusty trophies and faded posters. It was not a guest room. It was a museum of the girl they wanted me to be. I lay on the twin bed, listening to the sounds of the house. My mother was downstairs clattering dishes. My father was on the phone in his study, his voice muffled. My phone buzzed. It was an email notification. Subject urgent. Direct deposit change request from HR. Apex Logistics. I sat up, ignoring the pain. I opened the email. Hi, Ellie. We received a request via the employee portal to update your direct deposit information to a new bank account, Green Confirm Bank. Since the request originated from a new IP address, our security protocol requires a verbal confirmation. We have paused the change pending your approval. Please call me ASAP. I stared at the screen. Green Confirm Bank. That was an online-only bank. I did not bank there. I called the number for our HR director. Sarah. Ellie. Sarah asked. I thought you were out for surgery. I am. I said, Sarah, I did not request a change. I thought so. She said, it looked weird. The request came in at, let me see, 11:30 this morning. Where did it come from? I asked. Can you see the location? Sure. Let me check the logs. It came from an IP address in Oak Creek, Ohio. Oak Creek, my parents' town. I looked at the Wi-Fi icon on my phone. I was connected to the house network. They had logged into my work portal. They knew my passwords, or maybe they had guessed them. I used variations of the same password for years, a habit my father had always scolded me about, which meant he knew the pattern. They were not just selling the condo. They were trying to reroute my paycheck. They were trying to cut off my cash flow completely. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty window. This was systematic. They were stripping me for parts. Thank you. Sarah, I said, trying to sound calm, please deny the request and lock my account. Do not let anyone change anything unless I am there in person. Done, she said. Are you okay? Ellie. You sound rattled. Just the meds. I said, thanks. Sarah. I hung up and looked around the room. The familiar posters of bands I used to love stared back at me. I felt a sudden, violent urge to tear them down. But then, the shame hit me again. Why did they need the money this badly? Was it my fault? Had I missed signs that they were struggling? My father had always been the provider. The Rock. If he was stealing my paycheck, he must be desperate. A part of me, the daughter part, wanted to go downstairs, hug him, and say, just tell me what you need. But the adult part of me, the woman who had built a career and a life, knew that if I gave them an inch, they would take everything. I needed to know if I could even go back to the city. I texted Maya, can you do me a huge favor? Go to the Avery. Check my mailbox. See if my name is still on the buzzer. She replied instantly, on it. Be there in 20. I waited. The minutes dragged. I heard my mother coming up the stairs. I quickly hid my phone under the pillow and pretended to be asleep. She opened the door, peered in, and whispered, rest well. Angel. She closed the door. I waited another 10 minutes. My phone buzzed. Maya Ellie. I can't get in. Me. What do you mean? Maya Mike at the front desk stopped me. He said the new owner gave strict instructions, no guests for Unit 4B, and he said he's not allowed to give me your mail. Me Mike knows you, he's known us for 5 years. Maya. He looked embarrassed. He showed me the note in the system. It says, previous owner is not permitted on premises. Harassment concerns. Harassment concerns. They had painted me as a stalker at my own home. They had told the buyer and the building staff that I was dangerous. That was why they needed to protect me. That was the narrative. Poor Ellie. She had a breakdown. We had to sell the place. She refuses to let go. I felt tears prick my eyes. Hot and stinging. It was a masterstroke. They had isolated me physically, financially, and socially. If I showed up there screaming, I would just prove them right. I needed a professional. I pulled up the Zoom app on my phone. I had scheduled a consultation with an attorney I found on a legal forum earlier that morning, hiding in the hospital bathroom. Her name was Sarah Jenkins, and she specialized in real estate fraud. I put in my earbuds and propped the phone against a stack of old yearbooks. Sarah appeared on the screen. She was sharp-featured, wearing a blazer, sitting in front of a wall of books. Ms. Young, she said. Yes, I whispered. I have to be quiet. My parents are downstairs. I understand, she said. I reviewed the summary you sent, the deed, the timeline. What do you think? I think you have a massive problem. Ellie, and I think you know that. Is it fraud? Sarah leaned forward. Based on what you told me, yes. If you did not sign that deed, it is forgery. If they used a power of attorney to benefit themselves without a gifting rider, it is a breach of fiduciary duty. If they lied to the notary, it is notary fraud. We can file a suit to quiet title. We can file an injunction to freeze the assets. But I asked, I heard the but in her voice. But these are your parents, she said. Once we file, it becomes public record. It becomes criminal. The district attorney might pick it up. Your parents could go to prison. Are you prepared for that? I closed my eyes. Prison, my father, with his blood pressure, my mother, with her anxiety. I do not want them to go to prison. I just want my house back. It rarely works that way, Sarah said gently. To get the house back, you have to prove they stole it. To prove they stole it, you have to accuse them of a crime. There is no middle ground where they give it back and everyone has a nice Thanksgiving dinner. I stayed silent. The reality of it was heavy. And there is another issue. Sarah continued. The money is likely moving if they wired it to a business account. They could be layering it, moving it through multiple accounts to hide the source. We need to move fast. She paused, looking at me through the screen. Ellie, I have to ask, do you have any other assets? Anything else they might know about or have access to stocks, bonds? Another property. Numb. I said automatically, the condo was it. That was my whole life. Are you sure? Think inheritance trusts. I shook my head. No. My grandmother left me some money when I was 21, but I put it into the condo. That is gone now. Okay, Sarah said. I will draft the engagement letter. You think about how far you want to push this, but do not wait too long. We disconnected. I sat there, the silence of the room pressing in on me. Inheritance, trusts. Something flickered in the back of my brain. A memory from years ago. My grandmother, Nana Rose. She had been the only person in the family who stood up to my father. She used to call him the governor because of how he tried to control every room. When she was dying, she had called me into her room at the hospice center. She had been weak, her voice barely a whisper. I left something for you, Eleanor, she had said, not for your father, for you, for when you need an exit. I don't need an exit. Nana, I had told her, I'm happy. Every woman needs an exit, she had insisted. Look in the envelope, the blue one, after the funeral. My parents had descended on her estate like locusts. They had handled everything. I had taken a few boxes of books and small trinkets. Wanting to avoid the feeding frenzy, the envelope, I had never opened it. It had felt too final, too painful. I had shoved it into a box of high school journals and forgotten about it. Where was that box? I looked at the closet. The door was painted a thick, glossy white. I got off the bed. Clutching my stomach, I walked to the closet and slid the door open. The top shelf was lined with plastic bins. Ellie's schoolwork, Ellie's trophies, Ellie's memories. I reached for the memories bin. It was heavy. I dragged it down, gritting my teeth against the pain in my incision. I sat on the floor and popped the lid. A smell of old paper and dried lavender wafted out. Prom photos, a dried corsage, a stack of birthday cards, and there, at the bottom, tucked between a yearbook and a diary, was a thick blue linen envelope. My heart started to pound. I picked it up. It was sealed, on the front, in Nana's shaky, spidery script. For Eleanor. Only Eleanor. I ran my thumb over the writing. My parents must have missed this. Or maybe they saw it and assumed it was just a sentimental letter. Not worth their time. They were looking for bank statements. Not goodbye notes. I tore the seal. Inside was not a letter. It was a thick stack of legal documents. I pulled them out. The top page was a certificate of trust. The Rose Kincaid, Irrevocable Trust. Beneficiary Eleanor Young. Trustee First Republic Trust Services. I flipped the page. There was a property deed attached. Not for a condo. For a house. 142 Willow Lane, Clearwater Creek, Pennsylvania. I had never heard of Clearwater Creek. I flipped to the next page. It was a bank statement for the trust. It showed monthly rental income, $1,200 a month, accumulated for the last 7 years. The balance was sitting in a protected account. And clipped to the very back of the stack was a small brass key. It looked old. It was taped to a piece of cardstock. Under the key, Nana had written, Safe Deposit Box 302, Main Street Bank. The deed is recorded in the trust's name. They cannot touch it. This is your house. Ellie, don't tell Robert. I sat on the floor of my childhood bedroom, holding the key. My parents had sold my condo. They had stolen my liquidity. They had tried to hijack my paycheck. They thought they had trapped me, but they didn't know about Willow Lane. I checked the date on the trust document. It was dated 2 weeks before Nana died. She had set this up specifically to bypass my parents. She knew. She had known 10 years ago what I was just realizing today. I looked at the door of my bedroom. Downstairs, I could hear my father laughing at something on the TV. It was a comfortable, relaxed sound. He thought he had won. He thought I was broken, and dependent. I squeezed the key in my hand until the metal bit into my palm. I wasn't broke. I owned another house, and I was going to use it to burn their plan to the ground. The drive to the bank was a study in agony. Every pothole in the road sent a jolt of fire through my abdominal muscles, a sharp reminder that I was less than 48 hours post-op. Maya drove her SUV with the caution of a bomb disposal technician, flinching every time I hissed in pain. You do not have to do this today. Ellie, she said, glancing at me. You look like a ghost, a very pale, sweaty ghost. I have to, I said, clutching the seatbelt strap to keep it off my incision. If I wait, they might find a way to block me. They found the condo. They found my work portal. I need to know what is in this box before they realize it exists. We pulled up to Main Street Bank, a brick fortress that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1950s. It was neutral ground. My parents banked at a large national chain. This was Nana's territory. Maya helped me out of the car. I walked with a hunch, guarding my stomach, moving at the speed of a toddler. Inside, the air conditioning was frigid. I presented the key and the trust certificate to the branch manager, a woman named Mrs. Higgins, who looked at my hospital bracelet with concern but didn't ask questions. It will just be a moment. Ms. Young, she said. She led me into the vault. The smell of dust and old metal surrounded us. She unlocked box 302, sliding the long metal drawer out. I will leave you to it, she said. I sat on a stool, my hands trembling. Maya stood guard by the door, watching the hallway like a bodyguard. I lifted the lid. It was not empty. Inside was a stack of manila envelopes, organized with the same meticulous care Nana applied to her knitting patterns. I pulled out the top document. It was a deed. Warranty deed. Grantee. The Rose Kincaid Irrevocable Trust. Property address. 1422 Willow Lane. Clearwater Creek. It was a house. A real, physical house. I pulled out a photo clipped to the back of the deed. It was a small, white bungalow with a blue front door and a massive oak tree in the front yard. It wasn't a mansion, but it was solid. It was real. Below the deed was a ledger. Nana had recorded every expense and every income source. And then I saw the bank statements for the trust account. Monthly deposit. $1,250. Source rental income. Monthly disbursement to beneficiary. $1,250. Label Kincaid stipend. My breath caught in my throat. For the last 7 years, I had received a monthly deposit of $1,250 into my savings account. The transaction description always read, Kincaid stipend. I had assumed, naively, that it was an annuity, a small allowance left over from her estate to help me with groceries or student loans. I never questioned it because Nana had always been private about money. It wasn't an allowance. It was rent. I was a landlord. I had been a landlord for 7 years and didn't even know it. I flipped through the correspondence. There were letters from a property management company called Creekside Realty. They handled the tenants, the repairs, the leases. They deposited the money into the trust, and the trust automatically pushed it to me. Nana had built a closed loop, a system designed to operate without me lifting a finger, specifically so I wouldn't have to ask my father for help managing it. She knew. Even back then, she knew that if I had an asset that required management, my father would step in to help and never leave. I looked at Maya. I own a house, I whispered. Maya looked over my shoulder. In Clearwater Creek. That is like 2 hours from here. It is a nice area. Quiet. It is rented. I said, I have tenants. I pulled out the most recent statement. The balance in the trust's holding account was healthy. Not millions, but enough to pay a retainer, enough to hire the kind of lawyer who didn't care about hurting my father's feelings. I realized then that the power dynamic had shifted. My parents had sold my condo because they thought it was my only lifeline. They thought that by liquidating it, they were cutting the strings that held me up, forcing me to fall back into their safety net. But they had missed this. They had missed the blue door on Willow Lane. I need to make a call. I said. I used my cell phone right there in the vault. I dialed the number for Creekside Realty. Creekside, this is Tom, a gruff voice answered. Hi, Tom, I said. This is Eleanor Young. I am the beneficiary of the Rose Kincaid Trust. Oh, Ms., young Tom said. His voice changed, becoming guarded. I am glad you called. We were confused by the email yesterday. My heart stopped. The email, yes. The one from your family administrator, he said. I gripped the phone. What family administrator? The person who emailed us. He said, they claimed to be acting on your behalf due to a medical emergency. Said you were in surgery and needed the rental income redirected to a new account for medical bills. They sent a form. I looked at Maya. Her eyes went wide. What did you do? Tom, I asked, my voice tight. Well, I told them no. Obviously. Tom said. He sounded offended. I told them the trust documents are clear. Payouts go to the beneficiary account on file only. Changes require a notarized directive from you or a court order. I do not take instructions from random Gmail accounts. I told them to pound sand. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Thank you. Tom, you did the right thing. I figured, he said. But hey, just so you know, they were pushy. Called 3 times. A woman. Sounded stressed. Said it was urgent. I blocked the number after the 3rd call. Can you send me the number they called from and the email? Sure thing. I hung up. It was a coordinated attack. It wasn't just the condo. While I was under anesthesia, my mother had sat in that waiting room, working 2 phones, She had sold my home, and she had tried to hijack the income from my grandmother's trust. She had gone down the list of every asset she thought I had. She failed with Tom because Tom was a stranger who followed rules. She succeeded with the condo because she had forged my signature and used her social connections to push it through. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. This was not panic. This was not a mistake. This was a raid. Back at my parents' house, I retreated to my room. I told my mother I was exhausted and needed to sleep. But as soon as the door clicked shut, I was on my laptop. I had the money now. I didn't have to be careful. I hired a forensic accountant named David Chen. I found him through a recommendation from the attorney I had spoken to earlier. David was expensive, and he usually worked on corporate embezzlement cases. But when I told him the timeline, he took the case immediately. I need you to trace the wire. I told him over a secure video link. I know the last 4 digits of the account it went to, 4409. The title company said it was a business account. Give me 2 hours. David said, if it is a business entity, it is registered. If it is registered, I can find it. I waited. The pain in my abdomen was a dull throb now, easily ignored compared to the racing of my mind. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, building the map in my head. The condo sold for $425,000. Mortgage payoff was roughly $80,000. Closing costs and fees took another chunk. Net proceeds, $342,000, wired to account 4409. Where did it go from there? My computer chimed. A secure message from David. Attached entity search report. I opened the file. Account ending 4409 is registered to Elite Occasions, LLC, registered agent Janet Young. Status active, business address, P.O., Box, 440 Oak Creek, Ohio. Elite Occasions. It was my mother's party planning business. She had started it 10 years ago when she went through a phase of wanting to be an entrepreneur. As far as I knew, she had planned 3 weddings and a baby shower, lost $5,000, and then stopped taking clients. I thought the business was defunct. It wasn't defunct. It was the getaway car. David's report went deeper. Public filing records show Elite Occasions, LLC, has had 0 revenue activity for 5 years. However, yesterday, a deposit of $342,000 was flagged by the receiving bank as unusual activity, but cleared due to the account age. Implication: the entity was kept active solely as a shell. She had kept the LLC alive. She had paid the annual filing fees. For years, just in case she needed a place to hide money. I closed the laptop. I needed to talk to them. Not as a victim, as a prosecutor. I made my way downstairs. It was slow going. I had to grip the banister with both hands. I found them in the sunroom. It was a cheerful room, filled with plants and wicker furniture, completely at odds with the reality of what was happening. My mother was reading a magazine. My father was staring at the garden, a glass of iced tea sweating on the table beside him. Mom, Dad, they looked up. My mother smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Ellie, you should be resting. You should be. Do you want me to bring you some soup? I do not want soup, I said. I sat down in one of the wicker chairs, wincing as I adjusted my posture. I want to talk about Elite Occasions, LLC. The room went dead silent. The kind of silence that happens when a glass breaks at a dinner party. My mother's face went pale, then red. She closed her magazine slowly. I do not know what you are talking about, she said. I know the wire went there. Mom, I said, I know you have the money. $342,000. It is sitting in the business account you haven't used in 5 years. She looked at my father. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just kept staring at the hydrangeas. We are holding it for you, she said, her voice rising in pitch. I told you that. It is a trust vehicle. It is not a trust. I said, it is an LLC, and you are the sole owner, which means you took my money and put it in your pocket. That is embezzlement. That is theft. How dare you? She hissed. She stood up, the magazine sliding to the floor. How dare you come into this house after we nursed you, after we saved you from foreclosure, and accuse me of theft. I am your mother. Then give it back, I said. I kept my voice low, calm. I was offering them a bridge, a way to walk back from the edge of the cliff. Just wire it back to me. We can unwind the sale. We can tell the buyer there was a legal error. We can fix this before it becomes a police matter. Please, just give it back. I am not giving it back to you so you can waste it, she shouted. You are unstable. Ellie, look at you. You are harassing title companies from your deathbed. You are obsessed with money. I am obsessed with survival, I yelled back. My control slipping. That was my home. You have no idea what it takes to survive, she screamed. She was shaking now, her hands balled into fists. You think you are so independent with your little job and your condo in the city? You have no idea what we have sacrificed to keep this family respectable, to keep your father's name clean. We did this for us, for all of us. You did it for yourself. I said, you stole from me because you are selfish. You are cold. She spat. Cold and ungrateful. You are choosing money over your family, over your own parents. I hope that money keeps you warm at night. Ellie, because you are burning a bridge you can never rebuild. She turned and stormed out of the room. I heard her footsteps thudding up the stairs, then the slam of a bedroom door. I sat there, trembling. The adrenaline was making my incision burn. I looked at my father. He hadn't moved. He was still watching the garden. Dad, I said. He took a slow sip of his tea. He placed the glass back on the coaster. He looked tired, not angry, just deeply, profoundly tired. You should not have looked. Ellie, he said softly. He turned his head to look at me. His eyes were watery. We tried to handle it quietly, he said. We really did. We thought if we moved the asset quickly, we could stop the bleeding before it reached you. What bleeding? I asked. Dad, what is going on? He shook his head. A small, sad smile touched his lips. You think this is about greed, he murmured. You think we just wanted a payday, didn't you? He looked back at the garden. You do not understand what we were trying to stop, he said. The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. What we were trying to stop, not what we wanted to buy, what they were afraid of. Dad, talk to me. Who is coming for us? He didn't answer. He just closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the chair. It is too late now, he whispered. You poked the bear. Ellie, you went looking for records. You called the title company. Now it is all going to come out. He looked defeated, resigned, like a man waiting for a sentencing hearing. I realized then that my mother was the engine of this operation, the anger, the energy, the execution. But my father was the architect of the fear that drove it. He wasn't surprised I had found the money. He was surprised I hadn't found the rest of it yet. I stood up. I couldn't be in that room anymore. The air felt heavy with secrets I wasn't ready to hear. I went back to my room and locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. What were they trying to stop? My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was the unknown number again. Ask about the promissory note. Ask who signed it. I stared at the text. Promissory note. I opened my laptop again. I went back to the county recorder's website, but this time, I didn't search for my name. I searched for theirs. Robert and Janet Young. The list of results was long. Mortgage refinancing, a home equity line of credit from 5 years ago, and then, at the very top, filed 3 days ago, 2 days before my surgery. Notice of pendency. Plaintiff Ironclad Capital Partners. Defendant Robert Young. Janet Young. Action foreclosure and lien enforcement. I clicked on the filing. It was a lawsuit. A massive one. It referenced a promissory note signed 3 years ago. The principal amount was $250,000. The interest rate was predatory 18%. The note was secured by all real and personal property of the debtors. I scrolled down to the exhibits. There was the note, signed by Robert Young, and below his signature, a guarantor signature. It looked like my mother's signature. But then I read the fine print of the default notice. The debtors have failed to cure the default within the prescribed period. The lender hereby exercises its right to accelerate the debt. Total amount due, $310,000. They owed $310,000. They had sold my condo for net proceeds of $342,000. The math was exact. They weren't stealing my money to buy a boat. They were stealing my money to pay off a loan shark before they lost their own house. They had liquidated me to save themselves. But the text message, ask who signed it. I zoomed in on the guarantor signature on the promissory note again. Janet Young. It looked like her handwriting, but I remembered the forgery on my deed. I remembered how practiced it looked. I looked at the text message again. Ask who signed it. Was it possible I pulled up the deed to my condo, the real one, from when I bought it 5 years ago? I put it side by side with the promissory note on my screen. The signature on the promissory note, the guarantor, didn't match my mother's usual signature. It had a loop in the Y that was distinct. I looked at my own signature on the old deed. The loop was there. I felt the blood drain from my face. They hadn't just forged my signature to sell the condo. They had forged my signature 3 years ago to co-sign the loan. I wasn't just the victim of the theft. I was the guarantor of the debt. That was why they had to sell my condo. If they defaulted, the lender was coming for me anyway. They sold my asset to pay off a debt that was fraudulently attached to my name. They were trying to erase the evidence of the first crime by committing a second one. My father's words echoed in my head. You don't understand what we were trying to stop. They were trying to stop me from finding out that I had been their financial human shield for 3 years. I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't feel my fingertips. I wasn't safe here. I was in the house of people who had been using my identity as collateral since I was 30. I needed to leave. But I couldn't leave yet. I needed evidence. I needed to nail this down so tight that they couldn't gaslight me about it ever again. I took a breath. I pushed the pain away. I turned into stone. I opened a new document on my computer. I typed Timeline of Events, January 31st, 06:00 a.m. Arrive at hospital. January 31st, 06:45 a.m. Sedative administered. January 31st, 07:15 a.m. Mother presents medical emergency form. January 31st, 10:15 a.m. Deed notarized fraudulent. January 31st, 11:30 a.m. Login attempt on work portal from Oak Creek IP. January 31st, 2 p.m. Wire transfer initiated to Elite Occasions, LLC. January 31st, 4 o'clock p.m. Email to Creekside Realty, attempting to divert trust income. I was building a cage, and I was going to put them inside it. I texted Maya, I need you to pick me up. Tonight. Park down the street. Do not come to the door. She replied instantly. On my way. I started packing my bag. I moved slowly, methodically. I took my clothes. I took my laptop. I took the blue envelope from Nana. I paused at the door of my bedroom. I looked at the trophies on the shelf. First place, debate team, most likely to succeed. They were proud of me. Once, or maybe they were just proud of the asset I was becoming. I walked out into the hallway. The house was quiet. My parents were likely in their bedroom, plotting their next move, or maybe just mourning the collapse of their scheme. I didn't say goodbye. I walked down the stairs, one painful step at a time, and out the front door into the cool night air. I wasn't Ellie the daughter anymore. I was Eleanor Young, the plaintiff, and I was done being handled. I stayed at Maya's house, sleeping in her guest room on a mattress that felt too soft, staring at a ceiling fan that wasn't mine. I had left my parents' house with nothing but a duffel bag and a burning, cold resolve, but I knew that physical distance wasn't enough. I needed legal armor. My attorney, Sarah Jenkins, did not waste time. By 8 o'clock the next morning, she had filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order in the county court. The goal was simple: freeze the proceeds of the sale before they could vanish completely. She CC'd me on the preservation letters she sent out. They were masterpieces of legal aggression. To Prestige Title and Escrow. You are hereby notified to preserve all communications, logs, and metadata related to file number 66529. Any destruction of evidence will be treated as spoliation. To Linda Miller, Notary. Public, we have reason to believe the notarization of the deed transfer was fraudulent. Preserve your journals. To Kincaid Holdings, LLC buyer. Be advised that the title to the property is in dispute due to allegations of forgery. Sarah called me at 9. We stopped the bleeding. Ellie, she said. Her voice was sharp, professional. The judge granted the temporary freeze on the Elite Occasions account. If the money is still there, it is locked. If it is still there, I repeated, we will find out soon enough, Sarah said. But we have another problem. The notary. Linda Miller. I asked. I recognized the name from the deed I had downloaded. She was a woman my mother played bridge with. A sweet, fluttery woman who always sent me birthday cards with $5 bills inside until I was 25. Yes, Sarah said. I spoke to her counsel this morning. She is claiming she came to the hospital. She is lying. I said, I never saw her. Her story is detailed. Ellie, she says she met your mother in the lobby. They went up to your room, but you were sleeping and looked, her words, unwell and grayish. She claims your mother told her you had signed the papers earlier that morning before the surgery, and she notarized them based on your mother's affirmation as a credible witness. That is illegal. I said, a notary has to witness the signature, or I have to acknowledge it to her face. I know that, Sarah said, and she knows that, but she is terrified. She is trying to cover her tracks by admitting to a procedural error, notarizing without the principal present, rather than admitting to fraud. She is trying to say it was a mistake born of compassion, not a conspiracy. Compassion. I scoffed. She notarized the theft of my home out of compassion. She is a family friend. Sarah said, that makes it harder. She will testify that she trusted your mother implicitly. It muddies the water. It makes it look like a tragic misunderstanding among friends rather than a criminal act. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Sarah, my mother used her... Exactly, Sarah said. And that is what we are going to prove. But Ellie, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. Your parents are not going to sit back and let us paint them as villains. They are going to fight. I found out what fighting looked like 2 hours later. My phone, which I had kept on silent, began to vibrate against the nightstand. It wasn't my parents. It was my Aunt Carol. Then my cousin Mike. Then my mother's sister, Aunt Brenda. I ignored them at first, but the sheer volume of notifications made my stomach turn. Finally, I opened a voicemail from Aunt Carol. Ellie, honey, it's Aunt Carol. Your mother just called me in tears. She said you ran away. She is worried sick about you. She said the anesthesia has you acting, paranoid, confused. She said you are accusing them of terrible things. Honey, you just had major surgery. You need to go back to them. You are not thinking clearly. Please, call me. We love you. I played the next one. Aunt Brenda, Eleanor. This is ridiculous. Your father is on the verge of a heart attack. He told us about the financial trouble you were in, how they sold the condo to save your credit score. And now you are suing them after everything they have done. You need to get help, mental help. Call your mother. They were controlling the narrative. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the walls close in. They hadn't just stolen the money. They were stealing my credibility. They were painting a picture of a hysterical, ungrateful daughter suffering from post-operative psychosis, lashing out at her saintly parents who had only tried to save her from her own financial incompetence. It was brilliant, and it was terrifyingly effective. If I went to the police now, my parents would produce a dozen witnesses, family members who would swear I was unstable. They would show the past due notices they had likely forged or exaggerated. They would play the victim card so hard the detective would offer them a tissue. I needed hard evidence, not just the deed. I needed to prove the intent. I walked out to the kitchen. Maya was at work, but her husband, Sam, was home. Sam was a large, quiet man who worked in IT compliance for a healthcare conglomerate. He lived his life in a world of audit logs and security protocols. Sam, I said. He looked up from his laptop. He was sitting at the kitchen island, eating cereal. Hey, Ellie, how is the stomach? It hurts, I said, but I need a favor, a big one. He put his spoon down. Maya told me everything. What do you need? I need to prove they logged into my accounts. I said, I know they accessed my work portal. I know they accessed my bank, but I need to prove it was them, and I need to prove they did it to hide things, not to help me. Sam nodded. Do you share any cloud accounts with them, family plan? Shared storage. No, I said, I have my own accounts. Did you ever log into your email on their devices, or their email on yours? I thought back, 2 Christmases ago. My mother had wanted to show me photos from a trip. She had handed me her iPad. I had logged into my Google Photos account to show her my own pictures. I didn't remember logging out. I might be logged into Google Photos on her iPad. I said. Sam stood up. That is a back door. If you are logged in, we can see the device activity for that iPad. And if they use Chrome... He didn't finish the sentence. He just opened a new tab on his laptop. Log in here, he said. I typed in my credentials. Sam navigated through the security settings with a speed that made my head spin. He pulled up the device activity log. iPad 7th generation, last active 14 minutes ago. Okay, Sam said. We can see what IP address it is using. Oak Creek, Ohio. It is them. I said. Sam clicked deeper. He went to the My Activity tab, because I had been logged in on the browser, and my mother, who was notoriously bad with technology, likely hadn't realized she was browsing under my profile. Her search history from the last 48 hours was right there. I watched the list populate. It was a window into her panic. January 38th, 00 p.m. How to expedite power of attorney. January 39, 15 p.m. Quickest way to sell condo for cash. January 30, 10:30 p.m. Kincaid Holdings, LLC owner. January 31st, 6 o'clock a.m. notary. Public open early. January 31st, 2:30 p.m. Wire transfer limits, business account. January 31st, 4 o'clock p.m. How to block someone from seeing bank account. It was all there. The premeditation, the intent, and then, a search term from this morning, how to prove mental incapacity in adult child. I felt a chill go through me. They weren't just defending themselves. They were researching how to have me declared incompetent. Sam took a screenshot, then another. He exported the entire history to a secure file. This is gold. Ellie, he said. It proves state of mind. It proves they were planning this before the surgery. And look at this search from yesterday afternoon. He pointed to the screen. January 31st, 3:45 p.m. Delete emails permanently. They are destroying evidence. Sam said, but if they did it on this iPad, and the iPad backed up to the cloud... He clicked on the backup settings. The last backup was at 4 a.m. this morning. He began the restore process to a virtual machine on his computer. It took 20 minutes. When it finished, we had a mirror image of my mother's iPad as it existed 4 hours ago. We opened her email app. The sent folder had been scrubbed. Empty. But Sam went to the trash folder. Also empty. He went to the drafts folder. Sometimes, Sam said, when people panic, they write emails they don't send, or they start typing and the system auto-saves. There was one draft, saved yesterday at 1 p.m. No subject. Addressed to Robert Young, 55gmail.com. Bob. I told the title company to send it to the LLC. Do not answer the phone if Ellie calls. I am going to tell her the bank seized it. We just need to get the check to Marco by Friday, or he says he files the lien. I can't believe we have to do this, but she will recover. We had no choice. Marco. Who is Marco? Sam asked. I don't know, I whispered. But that is the smoking gun. We need to get the check to Marco. They weren't just paying off the bank. They were paying off a person. My father texted me an hour later. Meet me at the CVS parking lot on 4th. Alone, please. Ellie, I can't talk at the house. I showed the text to Maya, who had just come home for lunch. Do not go, she said. It is a trap. It is not a trap, I said. It is a surrender negotiation. He is the weak link. I need to break him. I drove my own car this time. The pain was still there, a constant hum, but the anger was a better painkiller than the oxycodone. I pulled into the CVS lot. It was gray and overcast. The sky threatening snow. My father's sedan was parked in the back row, away from the store entrance. I parked 2 spots away. I saw him sitting in the driver's seat, his head resting on the steering wheel. I got out and walked over. I tapped on the glass. He jumped. He looked at me with eyes that were red-rimmed and sunken. He rolled down the window. "Get in," he said. "It is freezing. I will stand," I said. "Ellie, please, I am not getting in the car." "Dad, talk." He sighed and opened his door, stepping out. He looked smaller than I remembered. His shoulders were slumped, his polo shirt wrinkled. He looked like an old man. "I am sorry," he said. "Is the money back in my account?" I asked. He flinched. "No, it is gone, gone." I felt a spike of panic. "Where is it?" "We paid the debt. Ellie, we had to." "Who is Marco?" I asked. His head snapped up. "How do you know that name? I know everything." "Dad, I know about the search history. I know about the draft email. I know about the promissory note you forged my signature on 3 years ago." He crumbled. He leaned against the car, covering his face with his hands. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." He sobbed. "It was an investment, a sure thing. Marco. He is a developer. He had this project in Florida. He promised 20% returns in 6 months. I just wanted to build something for us. For your mother. She has always wanted more. So you gave him $250,000, I asked. "I borrowed it against the house," he said. "And then the project got delayed. And then Marco said he needed more to secure the permits. So I signed the promissory note. I put you down as the guarantor because my credit was maxed out. I didn't think it would matter. I thought the payout would come through in 3 months and I would pay it off, and you would never know. And the project failed." He nodded. "It was a scam. Or maybe just bad luck. I don't know. But Marco, he is not a bank. Ellie, he is hard money. Private equity. When we defaulted, he didn't send letters. He sent people to the house. He told us he would take everything. He filed the lien. He said he would expose us. So you sold me out to save your reputation, to save our lives," he pleaded. He grabbed my arm. I recoiled, pulling away. "Do not touch me," I said. "Ellie," he said, his voice desperate. "We just borrowed the condo. We were going to pay you back. I have a life insurance policy. I was going to cash it out. We just needed time. But Marco gave us a deadline, Friday, and then your surgery. It was like a sign, a window where we could move the asset without you stopping us. We panicked. A sign." I repeated. "My medical crisis was a sign from God that you should rob me." He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. I saw the love there, twisted and sick. He really believed it. He believed that sacrificing me was a form of protecting the family unit. "You need to fix this." I said, "I can't." He whispered, "The money is with Marco. It is gone. Then you are going to prison. Dad." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear. Real, primal fear. "You wouldn't," he said. "You are my daughter. I am the victim." I said, "And I am done being the daughter." I turned to walk away. "Ellie," he called out. "Wait. There is something else." I stopped. "The money didn't all go to Marco," he said. I turned back. "What the check to Marco was for $310,000, he said. "The condo sold for $342. Where is the other $32,000, I asked. "Your mother," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "She moved it. She said we needed a cushion, for legal fees, in case you fought back. Where did she move it? I don't know," he said. "She didn't tell me. She doesn't trust me anymore. She says I'm too soft." I looked at him with a mix of pity and disgust. He was a broken man, crushed between a loan shark and his wife. "Go home, Dad," I said, "and tell Mom I am coming for the $32,000, and the house, and everything else." I drove back to Maya's house in a daze. The betrayal was complete. They hadn't just paid off a debt. They had kept a war chest to fight me. When I walked in, my phone rang. It was David Chen. the forensic accountant. Ellie, I have an update on the wire. He said, I know. I said, it went to a guy named Marco, a developer. David paused. Well, yes and no. The bulk of it. $310,000 went to an account held by Sunshine State Development, LLC. That tracks with your developer theory. But there was a second wire. The $32,000 I asked. Yes, $32,000. It was wired 2 hours later, but not to a bank account. To where? To a crypto exchange. David said, Coinbase. Crypto. I frowned. My mother thinks the cloud is actual water vapor. She doesn't know how to use crypto. Someone does. David said, the wallet address it was sent to has been active for months. It is receiving small payments from elite occasions regularly. I thought about the hidden partner theory. Someone was helping her. Someone who knew technology. Someone who knew how to hide money. Who is the partner? I asked. I can't see the wallet owner. David said, that is the nature of crypto. But I can see the transaction pattern. Whoever it is, they are on the payroll. I hung up, my mind racing. Who else was involved? And then I thought about the buyer, Kincaid Holdings. I sat down at the computer and searched for Kincaid Holdings, LLC. It was a Delaware entity, anonymous, but I remembered the outline of the story I was living. The buyer wasn't a stranger. I went back to the deed. I looked at the address listed for the grantee, 1200 Highland Avenue, Suite 400. I searched the address. It was a law firm, Peterson Associates. I searched Peterson Associates, Janet Young. A hit came up, a Facebook photo from 5 years ago. My mother at a gala, standing next to a tall, silver-haired man. The caption, Great night with our brilliant attorney, Alan Peterson. Alan Peterson, her old friend, the one who helped her set up elite occasions years ago. I searched Alan Peterson Kincaid Holdings. Nothing. But then I searched Alan Peterson Marco. And there it was. A news article from the local business journal. Local attorney Alan Peterson represents Sunshine State Development in zoning dispute. The circle closed. Alan Peterson was Marco's lawyer. My mother hadn't found a buyer. She had handed the condo directly to the creditor's lawyer. Kincaid Holdings was a shell company for the loan shark. They had effectively foreclosed on me without a foreclosure process. They just took the deed as payment, and Alan Peterson was the one who structured it. He was the one who likely told her how to use the power of attorney. He was the hidden hand. I felt sick. It was a conspiracy of professionals. A lawyer, a notary, a developer, all feasting on my assets because my parents were too weak to say no. My phone buzzed again. It was the unknown number. The texter. I know you are looking into the notary. You should look at the emails from January 29th. I stared at the screen. January 29th, 2 days before the surgery. I texted back. Who are you? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then appeared again. I used to work for elite occasions. I was the assistant. I quit yesterday. Why did you quit? I asked. Because your mother asked me to backdate a document. She wanted me to create a meeting minutes log saying you were at a board meeting in December where you agreed to sell the condo. I told her I wouldn't do it. She fired me. My heart hammered. This was a witness who had refused to commit a crime. Will you testify? I asked. I am scared. The reply came. Your mother knows people. She said she would ruin my reputation. She said she would tell my new employer I stole from her. I can protect you. I typed, I have a lawyer. We can get you whistleblower status. Please, I need you. A long pause. Meet me. The texter wrote, the coffee shop on Main. In an hour. Come alone. I looked at the time. It was 5 p.m. I grabbed my keys. Sam looked up from his computer. Where are you going to meet a witness? I said, Ellie, be careful, he warned. I am done being careful, I said. I drove to the coffee shop. I sat in the back booth, watching the door. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Then, a young woman walked in. She looked about 22, nervous. She was wearing a hoodie and looking over her shoulder. I recognized her. She had been at my parents' Christmas party a year ago. Passing hors d'oeuvres. Chloe, that was her name. She saw me and walked over. Sliding into the booth, Her hands were shaking. "Hi, Ellie," she whispered. "Hi, Chloe," I said. "Thank you for coming." She reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. She slid it across the table. "What is this?" I asked. "I made a copy," she said. Before she locked me out of the system, "It has everything. The emails to Alan Peterson, the instructions to the notary, the drafts of the forged letters, and the audio recording. Audio recording, I record my meetings." She said, "For notes, I have her on tape. Ellie, I have her telling your father that you would never notice the money was gone because you were too medicated to count." I took the flash drive. It felt heavy in my hand. It was the nail in the coffin. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. Chloe looked down at her hands. "Because she tried to make me sign the notary book too." She said, "She wanted me to forge your signature in the book so it looked like you were there." I told her no, and she laughed at me. She said, "Everyone has a price. Chloe, even family." She looked up at me, her eyes wet. "I don't have a price," she said. I reached out and squeezed her hand. "Neither do I." I left the coffee shop with the flash drive in my pocket. The wind was biting, cold and sharp, but I didn't feel it. I had the map. I had the timeline. I had the confession. I had the digital trail. And now, I had the tapes. My parents thought they were playing a game of reputation management. They thought they could shame me into silence. They were about to find out that silence was the one thing I couldn't afford anymore. I got into my car and dialed Sarah. "Sarah," I said, "get the papers ready. We are not just freezing the assets. We are filing for fraud and racketeering," I added, thinking of Alan Peterson. "We are going to burn the whole thing down." The conference room in Sarah Jenkins' office was glass-walled and smelled faintly of lemon polish and expensive coffee. It was a sterile environment, devoid of the messy, sticky warmth of family, which was exactly why I liked it. I sat at the head of the table, a heating pad pressed against my stomach, watching Sarah organize the evidence Chloe had given us. We were not preparing for a family therapy session. We were preparing for a siege. "This is the linchpin," Sarah said, projecting a document onto the wall monitor. It was an email screenshot from my mother to Chloe, dated January 28th at 4:30 in the afternoon, 3 days before my surgery. Subject draft for hospital, Chloe. Please type this up on plain paper, no letterhead. I, Eleanor Young, being of sound mind, hereby authorize my father, Robert Young, to handle all necessary property transactions during my recovery period, make the font size large, and call the mobile notary service. Book them for the hospital lobby at 8 a.m. on the 31st. Tell them the client is nervous, so we need to be quick. I stared at the words. Client is nervous. She wasn't describing a nervous client. She was describing a daughter she planned to drug and manipulate. This proves it was not an emergency decision made in the hallway because Dad panicked about a debt. Sarah said, "She planned the notary. She drafted the consent. She knew exactly when you would be vulnerable. This destroys the good faith defense." I nodded, feeling a strange, cold detachment. A week ago, reading this would have made me cry. I would have felt the sting of betrayal, the heartbreak of a child realizing her mother views her as an appliance to be pawned. But today, I just felt like an auditor reviewing a non-compliant file. The heartbreak had calcified into something harder, something useful. "What about the buyer?" I asked. Peterson, Sarah grimaced. "That is the complication. I spoke to Peterson's associate this morning. We offered to unwind the sale. We told them we have evidence of fraud, and that the deed is void from the start. And they are playing hardball. They claim they have already taken possession. They claim demolition started yesterday." "Demolition?" I sat up straighter, wincing as the incision pulled. "They are saying they gutted the kitchen and the primary bath." Sarah said gently, "They are arguing that the property is no longer in the condition it was sold in, so a simple rescission is impossible. They are trying to create a situation where unwinding is so expensive and messy that you will settle for a cash payout instead of the condo." "They are lying," I said. "It has been 48 hours. You cannot get a demo permit that fast in this city. Peterson is a zoning attorney." Sarah reminded me. He knows how to pull strings. Or he is just bluffing, hoping you will be too devastated to check. I stood up. It was a slow, deliberate process. I am going to check. I said, Ellie, Sarah warned, you are not supposed to be driving, and there is a restraining order on the property, or at least a no trespass notice they filed against you. I am not going to trespass. I said, I am going to drive by. I need to see it. Maya drove me. We didn't talk much on the way to the Avery. The city skyline looked the same as it always did, gray, steel, indifferent, but it felt like a foreign country to me now. I used to be a citizen here. Now I was a refugee. We turned onto my street. My heart gave a painful throb, not from the surgery, but from the muscle memory of coming home. I love this street. I love the way the trees arched over the road. Maya slowed down as we approached the building. Oh, Ellie, she whispered. I looked. There was a dumpster parked in the loading zone. A massive, yellow, industrial dumpster. It was filled to the brim. I saw the corner of a velvet armchair, my armchair, the teal one I had bought with my first bonus check. It was upside down, a jagged tear in the fabric revealing the foam underneath. I saw a lampshade, crushed. I saw black garbage bags, dozens of them, piled high, and poking out of one bag, I saw the spine of a book, The Great Gatsby, my vintage copy. They hadn't hired movers. They hadn't put my things in storage. They had hired a junk removal crew. They hadn't just sold the condo. They had erased me. They had treated my life, my curated sanctuary, as trash to be hauled away to a landfill. I watched a man in a gray jumpsuit toss a cardboard box into the bin. I heard the sound of glass breaking. Maybe it was my wine glasses. Maybe it was the framed photo of me and Nana. Ellie, do you want me to stop? Maya asked, her voice thick with tears. We can go down there. We can scream at them. No, I said. My voice sounded flat, robotically calm. Keep driving. But that's your stuff. It is just stuff. Maya, keep driving. She looked at me, alarmed by my lack of reaction. I was alarmed too, in a distant way. I should be sobbing. I should be clawing at the window, but I felt nothing. It was as if the nerve endings in my soul had been cauterized. I watched the dumpster recede in the side mirror as we drove away. I realized then what I was becoming. I was becoming someone who could look at the destruction of her own history and calculate the damages instead of feeling the loss. I was becoming a weapon, and the scary part was, I liked it. It felt safer than being a daughter. When we got back to Maya's house, Sam was waiting for us in the kitchen. He looked grim. I got a ping. He said, from the hospital's patient portal. My parents. I asked. He nodded. Access attempt at 10 a.m. failed because we changed the password. But then what? Then there was a request logged from an external fax number. A request for full psychiatric history and intake notes sent to the records department. The request claimed to be from a legal guardian pending competency hearing. I stared at him. They are trying to have me committed. I said, or at least, they are trying to build a paper trail that says I am mentally incompetent so they can invalidate anything I say. Sam handed me a printout. The hospital's compliance officer flagged it. They called me because I'm listed as the emergency contact on the new profile. I told them it was fraudulent. They are opening an internal investigation into who sent the fax. Let me see the fax number. I said, if the stress of his crimes is affecting his heart, that is a consequence, not a weapon you can use against me. There was a stunned silence on the other end. You are not yourself. Brenda stammered. This is the surgery talking. You were always such a sweet girl, so loyal. I was obedient. I said, there is a difference. I hung up and blocked the number. Then I blocked Uncle Steve, then Cousin Mike, then my mother, then my father. I sat there, looking at the block list. It was a long list. It was my entire support system, my entire history. I felt a pang of loneliness so sharp it almost doubled me over. But I pushed it down. I shoved it into the same box where I had put the image of my teal chair in the dumpster. I have work to do. I told the empty room. I opened the blue envelope from Nana again. The trust. The Rose Kincaid Irrevocable Trust. It was the only thing I had left that was safe. But was it safe? My parents knew I had assets. They didn't know about Willow Lane specifically, but if they hired a private investigator, or if they used Alan Peterson's resources, they might find it. I called the number for the trust officer at First Republic. "This is Mr. Henderson." A calm, deep voice answered. "Mr. Henderson, this is Eleanor Young. I need to make an immediate change to the trust bylaws. We usually require a meeting for that. Ms. Young, I am sending you a notarized directive via secure email right now." I said, "I want to add a poison pill amendment to the trustee provisions." "Go on." "I want to stipulate that no individual related to the beneficiary by blood or marriage, specifically Robert Young or Janet Young, may ever be appointed as trustee, successor trustee, or emergency guardian of the trust assets. Furthermore, I want a clause that states, if any legal challenge is brought against the trust by said individuals, the trust is to immediately liquidate all assets and donate the proceeds to the local animal shelter." Mr. Henderson paused. "That is a very aggressive clause. It is often called a terror clause." "Do it," I said. "I want them to know that even if they win, they lose. If they touch this house, it burns to the ground." "I understand," he said. "I will draft it immediately." I hung up. I felt a ghostly hand on my shoulder. Nana. She would have loved that. She would have loved the scorched earth policy. "A place that stays yours," she had said. I was making sure it stayed mine, even if I had to turn it into dust to keep it from them. Now, the meeting. I needed them in a room. I needed them on the record. I needed to look them in the eye and see if there was anything left of my parents inside the strangers who had robbed me. Sarah sent the email. To Robert Young, 55 Gmail.com. Janet Young Events. Gmail.com. Resettlement discussion. Final offer. My client, Eleanor Young, is willing to meet to discuss a resolution regarding the unauthorized sale of Unit 4B. The meeting will take place at my offices on Friday at 2:00 p.m. Failure to attend will result in the immediate filing of a civil complaint for fraud, forgery, and conversion. The reply came 12 minutes later. My mother, we will come, but we want to see Ellie alone, no lawyers. This is a family matter. If she brings you, we walk. I read the email over Sarah's shoulder. She wants to isolate you, Sarah said. She thinks she can cry and guilt trip you into signing a waiver if I'm not there to stop her. Tell her no. I said, Sarah typed, my client refuses. I will be present. A court reporter will be present to transcribe the meeting, if you prefer. You may bring your own counsel. Those are the terms. We waited. An hour. 2 hours. Finally, a reply. Fine. We will be there. We are bringing Alan Peterson. I smiled. It was a cold, tight smile. Good, I said. I want Peterson there. I want him to hear the tapes. Friday came. The sky was a bruised purple, heavy with snow. I dressed carefully. Not in sweatpants, not in recovery clothes. I wore my sharpest blazer, a white silk blouse, and tailored trousers that were loose enough to accommodate my incision but looked structured. I put on makeup to hide the circles under my eyes. I looked like a CEO. I looked like someone who owned things. I arrived at Sarah's office 30 minutes early. I sat in the conference room, staring at the empty chairs on the other side of the mahogany table. David Chen, the forensic accountant, walked in. He was a young guy, sharp, wearing a hoodie under a blazer. Ellie, he said, I have something. The crypto, I asked. Yeah, I traced the 32,000. He opened his laptop and spun it around. So, the wallet address is anonymous, right? But the user made a mistake. A classic rookie mistake. They paid for a subscription service using Bitcoin from that same wallet. A recurring payment. To what? To a premium newsletter service for charitable giving strategies, and the account associated with that subscription. He clicked a button. A name popped up on the screen. Account holder Julian Thorne. I stared at the name. The air left the room. Julian Thorne. No. I whispered, That's impossible. Who is he? Sarah asked, looking up from her files. He is the head of the Oak Creek Community Foundation. I said, he was my mentor in high school. He wrote my college recommendation letters. He sat with my parents at graduation. I thought about Julian. He was a pillar of the community. Silver hair, kind eyes, a voice like warm honey. He ran the biggest nonprofit in the county. He was the one who had encouraged me to go into logistics. You have a mind for order. Ellie, he had told me, use it. Why would my mother be sending $32,000 of stolen money to Julian Thorne? I asked. David clicked another file. I looked into him. David said, on the surface, he is a saint, but his foundation, the financials are opaque. And look at this. He pulled up a photo from a gala 3 years ago. It was my mother, my father, Alan Peterson, and Julian Thorne. They were all toasting with champagne. The caption read, "The Dream Team. Building the future of Oak Creek. They are all connected." David said, Peterson is the lawyer, Marco is the muscle, Julian is the face, and your parents. My parents are the patsies, I said, or the investors. I felt a wave of nausea. Julian wasn't just a family friend. He was the charismatic leader my father had mentioned, the one they were trying to impress, the one they were investing with. My father hadn't just borrowed money from a loan shark. He had been sucked into a scheme run by the most trusted man in town. And Julian Thorne, the man who had taught me about ethics in his civics seminar, was the one holding the crypto keys to my stolen equity. The intercom buzzed. Sarah pressed the button. Mr. and Mrs. Young are here, the receptionist said, and Mr. Peterson. I looked at the door. I wasn't just facing my parents. I was facing a syndicate, a small suburban syndicate built on potlucks and handshakes and betrayal. Let them in, I said. The door opened. My mother walked in first. She looked impeccable, wearing a cream-colored coat that I knew cost more than my monthly mortgage payment used to be, but her eyes were darting around the room, manic and hard. My father followed. He looked gray. He was walking with a cane I had never seen him use before, and behind them, Alan Peterson, tall, slick, wearing a suit that cost $5,000. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on me with a look of amused condescension. Hello? Eleanor, Peterson said. His voice was smooth, oily. I didn't stand up. I didn't smile. Sit down, I said. My mother flinched at the tone. She looked at me, waiting for the daughter who would rush to get her a chair. I stayed still. Sit down. I repeated. They sat. I looked at my father. I looked at the man who had taught me to ride a bike, and then I looked at the empty chair next to him, and in my mind, I saw Julian Thorne sitting there, laughing at me. I placed the flash drive on the table. It made a small, plastic click against the mahogany. Before we begin, I said, looking directly at Alan Peterson, I think we should listen to a recording. It is from January 29th. It features my mother, and it features a very interesting conversation about how to trick a notary. Peterson's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, but I saw it, and I knew, in that moment, that I had them. The silence in the conference room was heavy, a physical weight that pressed against the glass walls. The flash drive sat in the center of the mahogany table like a small, black grenade. Alan Peterson stared at it. His smooth, practiced demeanor didn't crack, but his eyes went flat. He knew what was on it. He knew that if I played that recording, the conversation would shift from a civil dispute to a criminal indictment. My mother, however, did not have his discipline. She reached for the drive. Give that to me, she snapped. Sarah's hand moved faster. She covered the drive with her palm. That is evidence. Janet, Sarah said calmly, you do not get to delete this one. My mother recoiled as if she had been slapped. She looked at my father, expecting him to intervene, to be the patriarch who demanded respect, but my father was staring at his hands, his cane resting against his knee, looking small and defeated. I cleared my throat. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. We are not just here to talk about the condo. I said, "We are here to talk about Julian Thorne." The name hit the room like a sudden drop in air pressure. My father's head snapped up, his face, already gray, drained of all remaining color. My mother froze, her mouth slightly open. Even Peterson shifted in his seat, his expensive suit suddenly looking uncomfortable. "You know him, don't you?" I asked. "The benevolent head of the Oak Creek Community Foundation. The man who sat at your table at the country club. The man who promised you 20% returns on your donations if you just kept the cash flowing." "I don't know what you are talking about," my mother said, her voice high and brittle. "Julian is a friend. He is a philanthropist. He is a laundry machine." "Mom," I said, "and you are his spin cycle." I opened the file on the screen behind me. David had prepared a flowchart. It was brutal in its simplicity. Wire 1, $310,000 to Sunshine State Development Marco. Wire 2, $32,000 to Julian Thorne. Crypto wallet. Wire 3, recurring payments from elite occasions to Thorne's charitable strategy fund. "You weren't just paying off a loan shark," I said. Looking at my father, "You were buying your way back in. You owed Marco money." "Yes, but you sent the extra $32,000 to Julian because you were afraid of losing your spot in his circle. You stole my equity not just to survive, but to maintain the illusion that you are the kind of people who can afford $5,000 dinner plates." My father made a dry, choking sob. "It wasn't like that." He whispered, "Wasn't it?" I asked. I looked at the timeline projected on the wall. "Let's look at the facts. Dad." I pointed to the first entry. January 31st, 6:45 in the morning. I was being sedated. "You were holding my hand. You told me you loved me." I pointed to the next entry. January 31st, 10:15 in the morning. "You were in the hospital cafeteria. Meeting with the notary you tricked into coming. You forged my signature while I was being cut open 2 floors above you." I moved down the list. January 31st, 11:30. "You logged into my work portal. You tried to redirect my paycheck. That wasn't about debt, Dad. That was about total control. You wanted to make sure that when I woke up, I had $0 to my name so I would have to crawl back to you." I looked at my mother. "And you?" I said, "You were the general. You drafted the emails. You instructed the assistant. You created the narrative that I was mentally unstable. You threw my furniture in a dumpster." I leaned forward. "You didn't just sell a house. You tried to delete a person." My mother stood up. Her chair scraped violently against the floor. "I did what I had to do," she screamed. The veneer of the society matron cracked, and something raw and ugly spilled out. "You think you are so special," she spat, pointing a manicured finger at me. "With your career and your independence. You think you did that yourself? We made you. We paid for the tutors. We paid for the college. We introduced you to the right people. And then you just walked away. You bought that condo and you locked the door and you barely called. You left us behind." "Ellie, I didn't leave you behind," I said, my voice steady. "I grew up. That is what children are supposed to do." "You abandoned us," she cried. "We were drowning the debt, the pressure. Julian said if we didn't pay up, we would be ruined. We would lose the house. We would be pariahs. And you were sitting there on $400,000 of equity that you didn't even need. You have a good job. You can get a mortgage. We couldn't. We had nowhere else to go. So you ate your young," Sarah said. Her voice was cold, cutting through my mother's hysteria. "You cannibalized your daughter's financial future to save your social standing. It is not about social standing. It is about survival," my mother shrieked. She looked at my father. "Tell her. Robert, tell her what they threatened to do." My father looked up. His eyes were wet. "They said they would put it in the paper." He whispered, "The bankruptcy, the fraud accusation from the last deal. Julian said he could make it go away if we settled the debt with Marco. He said he would protect us." He looked at me, pleading. "I couldn't let your mother see her name in the police blotter. Ellie, I just couldn't. I thought if we took the condo, we could pay it back before you noticed. I thought I could fix it." I looked at him. This man who had always been the strongest person I knew. He was a husk, a terrified man who had spent his life buying respect he couldn't afford. And now he was paying the bill with my life. You were never going to pay it back. Dad, I said softly, because you don't have it. You are broke. And Julian Thorne isn't your friend. He is a predator who fed on your vanity. I turned to Alan Peterson. And you, I said, you represent the buyer, Kincaid Holdings, which is really just a shell for Marco and Julian. Peterson cleared his throat. He adjusted his cufflinks. My client purchased the property in good faith. Eleanor, we have a valid deed. We have a notarized power of attorney. If you want to allege fraud, you can file a complaint, but we will tie you up in court for 5 years. The property is already being renovated. The assets are commingled. You will run out of money before you get a judgment. I smiled. It was the dangerous, calm smile I had learned from Sarah. I don't think so. I said. I clicked the remote. A new document appeared on the screen. It was an affidavit. Affidavit of Chloe Miller, former assistant. Elite Occasions, LLC. Statement. On January 29th, Janet Young instructed me to draft a fraudulent letter of consent. She explicitly stated that her daughter, Eleanor Young, was unaware of the plan. Furthermore, on January 31st, I overheard a phone call between Janet Young and Alan Peterson. Peterson went still in this call. I read aloud. Janet Young stated, "Don't worry about Ellie. We told the building she is moving to London for work. Just tell your client she is out of the country and won't be checking the unit." I looked at Peterson. "You knew." I said, "You knew I wasn't moving to London. You knew I was in the hospital. You constructed the lie about the foreign move to explain why the owner wasn't present at closing and why the furniture was being dumped. That destroys your good faith defense. You are not a bystander. Alan, you are a co-conspirator." Peterson's face turned a shade of pale that clashed with his tan. He looked at my mother with pure venom. "You said you handled the assistant." He hissed at her. My mother looked wild-eyed. She was a liability now, and she knew it. I leaned back in my chair. "Here is the offer," I said, "and it is the only one you are going to get." I laid it out. 1. The sale is rescinded immediately. You file a corrective deed today returning the property to my name. 2. You return the $342,000. I don't care where you get it. Ask Julian. Ask Marco. Sell your own house. I don't care. I want my equity back. 3. You pay for the restoration of my unit. Every wall you tore down. Every fixture you removed. And you pay for the furniture you threw away. I have the receipts. 4. I am reporting the unauthorized access of my medical records to the Hospital Compliance Board and the Department of Health and Human Services. That is non-negotiable. My mother gasped. "Ellie, no, that is a federal offense. They could put us in jail. You should have thought of that before you tried to have me committed." I said. My father put his head in his hands, and if we refuse, Peterson asked, trying to regain some ground, "Then I play the tape." I said, "I play it for the district attorney. I play it for the State Bar Association, and I play it for the local news. I think the story of how the prominent Alan Peterson and the beloved Julian Thorne conspired to rob a surgery patient will get a lot of clicks." Peterson stared at me. He was doing the math. He was calculating the cost of the money versus the cost of his license. "We can rescind the sale," he said tightly. "We can return the funds held in escrow, but the restoration costs, that is significant. That is your problem." I said. My mother suddenly reached into her purse. Her hands were shaking violently. "Wait," she said. "Wait, there is something else." She pulled out a piece of paper. It was wrinkled, as if she had been clutching it for hours. "We have a contract," she said, her voice trembling. She slid it across the table. I looked at it. Family Repayment Agreement. I, Eleanor Young, hereby acknowledge a debt of $500,000 to my parents, Robert and Janet Young, for upbringing costs, education, and living expenses provided from birth to age 22. I agree that they may liquidate any assets in my name to satisfy this debt. It was signed. The signature looked like mine. "We signed this years ago." my mother said, looking at Sarah, pleading. When she graduated college, she promised to pay us back. This proves we had the right to sell the condo. It was a debt collection. I stared at the paper. It was pathetic. It was desperate. Sarah didn't even blink. She reached out and took the paper. She held it up to the light. Then she looked at the bottom corner. "Janet," Sarah said. Her voice filled with pity. "Did you print this at home?" "Yes," my mother said. "Years ago." Sarah pointed to the tiny, microscopic code printed by the laser printer on the bottom edge. "These yellow dots," Sarah said. "They are a machine identification code. Every printer leaves them. They contain the date and time of printing." She pulled out a magnifying loupe from her briefcase. She leaned over the paper. "This document was printed yesterday." Sarah said, "At 4:45 p.m., my mother froze. "And the font," Sarah continued. "This is Calibri Light. Microsoft updated this specific version in 2024. You couldn't have printed this 5 years ago." Sarah dropped the paper back on the table. "This is forgery." "Janet," again, "and attempting to submit falsified evidence in a legal negotiation is another crime. Do you want to keep adding to the list?" My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. She slumped back in her chair, the fight finally draining out of her. She looked at my father, but he wouldn't look at her. He was staring at me, tears streaming down his face. "Why," he whispered, "why are you doing this to us?" "Ellie, we are your family." I looked at him. I felt a phantom ache in my stomach, a ghost of the little girl who used to think he could fix anything. But then I looked at the timeline. I looked at the dumpster in my mind. "You stopped being my family when you decided I was an asset to be liquidated." I stood up. "You have 24 hours to wire the funds and file the deed." I told Peterson, or I go to the police. I turned to my parents. "Do not contact me. Do not come to my building. Do not call my friends. If you do, I will file for a permanent restraining order. Ellie, please." My mother sobbed. "We have nowhere to go. Marco will take the house. We will be on the street." I looked at her one last time. "Then you better start packing," I said. I walked out of the conference room. I didn't look back. The fallout was fast and quiet. The way lawyers like it, Peterson folded. He didn't want the exposure. Within 48 hours, the deed to my condo was transferred back to my name. The $342,000 was wired back to my account. Peterson likely forced Julian Thorne to cough it up from the charity funds to keep the scheme hidden. I didn't get everything. The restoration money was a fight I decided to leave for insurance. I had the shell of my home back. That was enough. My parents were not so lucky. Without the condo money to pay Marco, the house of cards collapsed. Sunshine State Development foreclosed on their home 3 weeks later. I heard through Aunt Brenda before I blocked her again that they were moving into a small rental apartment on the bad side of town. I didn't visit. I reported the medical privacy breach. The hospital fired the clerk who had processed the fax and launched an investigation into the guardian claim. My parents were blacklisted from the system. They could never access my records again. Julian Thorne remained untouched, for now. He was too insulated, too powerful. But I sent a copy of the timeline and the bank transfers to an investigative journalist I found online. I didn't need to be the one to take him down. I just needed to light the fuse. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday, I drove out of the city. The pain in my abdomen was gone, replaced by a thin, silvery scar. I felt lighter. I drove west, watching the skyline fade in the rearview mirror. I drove past the suburbs where I grew up, past the exit for my parents' old house, and kept going until the roads turned to 2 lanes and the strip malls turned into fields. I pulled into the town of Clearwater Creek. It was quiet, sleepy, the kind of place where people sat on porches and waved at cars. I turned onto Willow Lane, and there it was, number 1422. It was exactly like the photo in Nana's box, a small, white bungalow with a steep roof and a big oak tree in the front yard. The blue door was bright and welcoming. I parked the car and got out. The air smelled like wood smoke and damp earth. I walked up the driveway. I didn't go to the door. I didn't want to disturb the tenants. I just stood on the sidewalk, looking at it, This was mine. My parents didn't know about it. Julian Thorne didn't know about it. The lawyers didn't know about it. It was a secret, a fortress. I thought about Nana Rose. I thought about how she must have watched my father for years, seeing the cracks in his character. The desperation, the weakness. She had known that one day he would come for me. So she built me a lifeboat. I touched the key in my pocket. The cold brass felt grounding. I wasn't homeless. I wasn't an orphan. Not really. I was a woman who had survived a surgery and a theft and a family implosion. And I was still standing. I took a deep breath. Filling my lungs with the cold air, I checked my phone. One last text from my mother, sent from a new number before I could block it. "We forgive you." I laughed. It was a genuine sound, startling a bird in the oak tree. They forgave me for refusing to be their victim. I deleted the text. I blocked the number. I looked at the house one last time. Then I got back in my car. I had a condo to renovate. I had a life to rebuild. And for the first time in 33 years, it was a life that belonged entirely to me. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope Ellie's journey resonated with you. It is a harsh reality that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones we need the most protection from. But as Ellie proved, the truth is a powerful weapon. I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and tell me where you are listening from. Have you ever had to draw a hard boundary with family to protect yourself? How did you handle it? Don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of betrayal, justice, and the resilience of the human spirit. Share your thoughts in the comments in English. I read every single one. Until next time, stay safe and keep your keys close.